Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching India Today Global. As India hosts AI Impact Summit 2026, world leaders and tech executives make a beeline for New Delhi, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have held several bilateral meetings since then. After welcoming French President Emmanuel Macron to India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Spanish President Pedro Sanchez. Prime Minister Modi also welcomed Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo. Orpo is in India to attend the AI Impact Summit, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi also had a bilateral meeting with the President of Republic of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, where both leaders discussed avenues to strengthen the bilateral cooperation in the areas of trade and investment, along with artificial intelligence and fintech. Prime Minister Modi also met the Chief Executive of Google, Sundar Pichai, and both of them discussed the artificial intelligence in advancing India's developmental goals. After meeting Prime Minister Modi, Sundar Pichai reposted his post on social media platform X by saying, and I quote, that we discussed how Google is helping with his mission to infuse AI at all levels in India to improve health, expand access to information in all languages, and support startups, agriculture, and so much more. Thank you, Prime Minister Modi, for bringing us together for the incredible summit, unquote. And moving on, let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine talks as well. Two-day trilateral meeting between United States, Russia, and Ukraine in Geneva ended without a major breakthrough, though officials described the talks as difficult but businesslike. Both sides signaled limited progress and agreed that another round of negotiations will take place soon. Shweta Lala with this report.
The two-day trilateral meet between US, Russia and Ukraine ended in Geneva on Wednesday without any major breakthrough. The meeting on the second day lasted for 2 hours.
The talks lasted for 2 days. We had very long discussions yesterday in various formats. Today we talked about 2 hours. Talks were difficult but businesslike. A new meeting will take place soon.
There is progress, but no details can be disclosed at this stage. The next step is to achieve the necessary level of consensus to submit the developed decisions for consideration by the presidents. Our task is to prepare a practical, not merely formal, foundation for this. Ukraine remains constructive. The ultimate objective is unchanged, a just and sustainable peace.
The US delegation included Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. The Russian delegation was led by presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky, and the Ukraine's team included National Security and Defense Council Secretary Rustem Umrov. The closed-door meeting on the first day centered on establishing ceasefire, monitoring arrangements, and addressing humanitarian concerns. According to sources, the initial talks were held in a tense atmosphere, with separate bilateral meetings between Russia and the United States, as well as Russia and Ukraine. As parties converged in Geneva, Russia said its forces had carried out massive attacks against Ukrainian energy infrastructure, while Ukraine claimed to have struck a Russian oil enterprise over the same time period. As per Russia's defense ministry, Russian forces struck Ukrainian military facilities, energy infrastructures, and drone bases with high-precision weapons and drones in the past 24 hours. With its air defense forces shooting down 8 Ukrainian guided aerial bombs and 224 fixed-wing drones.
Всіх цих російських ракетах та дронах, які були застосовані.
All of these Russian missiles and drones used today contain thousands of components that Russia does not produce itself. 5 Iskander-M missiles contain at least 75 critical foreign-made components. Each Shahid drone contains hundreds of such components imported into Russia from other countries, and not only from Chinese companies, by the way, but also from Europe, America, and Japan. It is important not only for us in Ukraine, but for global security overall that partners truly block the supply chain of critical components to Russia for weapons production.
Для глобальної безпеки важливо, щоб партнери реально блокували ланцюжки.
The Russian and Ukrainian delegations had last met in Abu Dhabi in January, which was brokered by the US. With President Donald Trump wanting to resolve the crisis at the earliest, Russia continues to demand for the full control of Ukraine's eastern Donbas, made up of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, which Ukraine does not agree to. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And from Russia-Ukraine conflict, now let's zoom into a West Asia conflict or a flashpoint. Tension spike in the world's most critical oil choke point. Iran briefly shuts parts of the Strait of Hormuz, where nearly a third of global seaborne oil passes. Missiles fired, live fire drill were conducted as talks between the United States and Iran concluded yesterday in Geneva. But what does this short-lived closure mean for the oil market, regional stability and global power in the Gulf? Our next report tells you more.
Iran has done what the world always feared, even if only for a few hours. Tehran temporarily shut parts of the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil artery, a narrow strip of water that carries the livelihood of the global economy. Officially, Iran said it was about safety, live-fire military drills, missile launches, controlled closure. But timing is everything. The shutdown came amid rising tensions with Washington, US military deployments increasing, domestic unrest inside Iran after a violent crackdown on protesters. This was not just a drill, it was a message. The Strait of Hormuz is only about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. On one side, Iran, on the other, Oman. Just nearby, the UAE's commercial powerhouse, Dubai. Through this narrow corridor flows roughly 13 million barrels of crude oil every single day. That's about 31% of global seaborne crude shipments. Nearly one-third of the world's oil moves through this one passage. Tankers from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE and Iran itself all rely on it. There are pipelines that bypass it, but they are limited. Most exports have no real alternative route, which means even the hint of disruption sends oil prices climbing, insurance premiums rising, markets shaking, especially across energy-hungry Asia. But this is the first such shutdown since the 1980s. Even during last year's intense 12-day conflict with Israel, when ballistic missiles were flying, Iran did not fully close the strait. This time, it did. The United States has repeatedly warned of possible military force over Iran's nuclear program. President Donald Trump has tied pressure and threats of strikes to pushing Tehran toward a nuclear deal. Recently, Vice President J.D. Vance has said that US seeks Iran nuclear deal through diplomacy, but will keep military options open. Iran, however, has warned it could target US interests across West Asia and Israel if attacked. In a region already on edge, with nuclear negotiations hanging in the balance, Iran demonstrated that it can escalate without firing a shot at a ship. And when one narrow waterway carries nearly a third of the world's oil, even a few hours of disruption becomes a global warning. The Strait of Hormuz is not just geography, it is pressure. And Tehran just showed it knows exactly how to apply it. With Rudrashish Kanjilal, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
US President Donald Trump recently repealed a scientific finding that greenhouse gas emissions endanger human health, removing the legal basis for federal climate regulations. It also ended subsequent federal greenhouse gas emission standards for all vehicles and engines of model year 2012 to 2027. The so-called endangerment finding was first adopted by the United States in 2009 and led to EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, to take action under the Clean Air Act of 1963 to curb emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other heat-trapping air pollutants from vehicles, power plants, and other industries. Former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who is in India, criticized Trump's move on environment protection. Listen to what she has to say.
But certainly it's fair to say that more developed countries in the South, China, India, and others, are making contributions because we haven't made a full-scale enough transition into clean, renewable energy to replace polluting fossil fuels. And, you know, when I talk about fossil fuels, I'm not just talking about climate change. I'm talking about the pollution that fills the air in Delhi or Beijing. I'm talking about the clear evidence that pollution is impacting our health. And not just among poor people, among all of us. The particulates and what we breathe in is affecting our health, and particularly the health of our children. So that's why when I talk about climate, I always talk about climate and health, because it's not just an energy issue, it is also a health issue. So when we think about this big intergenerational transfer of wealth, I think that the older generation needs to join with the younger generation in doing whatever we can to interrupt this cycle of climate change and health impacts. And so from that perspective, we do need governments to address the systemic and structural issues, but we also need businesses and corporations to think that way as well. Just because the President of the United States does not want corporations to care about climate change doesn't mean you shouldn't care about climate change. Frankly, that's a political view of a dinosaur. It is just so out of touch with everything that we know, how we are living, what we are breathing, what we are seeing. We can't be told, don't pay attention to what has happened for political reasons. We have to say, no, we see it, and we're going to respond to it. So the systemic changes in both mitigation and adaptation must continue despite some of the pushback coming from my country in particular.
Meta CEO and billionaire Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg will testify in a landmark trial for the first time in a US court. Zuckerberg will be questioned about Instagram's effect on mental health of young users. He has previously testified before the US Congress, but this time the stakes are higher at the jury trial in Los Angeles. Meta may have to pay damages if it loses the case, and the verdict could erode Big Tech's long-standing legal defense against the claims of user harm. A 20-year-old woman identified as Callie GM in a court is suing Facebook and Instagram's parent company, Meta Platforms, and Alphabet, Google, which owns YouTube, and other platforms as well. A verdict against the tech companies could smoothen the way for similar cases in US courts and shakes the industry's long-standing US legal defense against the claim of user harm. Google, Meta, TikTok, and Snap faces number of lawsuits in California. And now, let's see what other stories are also making headlines across the globe in World at a Glance.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held talks with his Cuban counterpart in Moscow amid what Russia call an illegitimate US blockade against the island. Lavrov said Moscow will continue to provide support to Cuba and the Cuban people in defending the country's sovereignty and security. Meanwhile, Cuba's fuel crisis has become a waste crisis as many garbage trucks don't have enough petrol to pick up rubbish which is piling up on most of Havana's street corners. Spokesperson of the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, is stepping down. McLaughlin is expected to leave her position as Assistant Secretary next week. She has been vocal defender of President Trump's mass deportation agenda. United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan met US Senator Lindsey Graham in Abu Dhabi. The senator said in a post on X, where he also criticized what he called false narratives circulating about the UAE and its leader. Earlier in the week, social media speculation about Sheikh Mohammed's health had surged after Turkey's President Erdogan postponed a planned visit to Abu Dhabi, and his office posted, then deleted a post on X saying the Emirati leader had health problems. Peru's ousted President Jose Jari bid farewell to his cabinet at the gates of the government palace after Congress voted to remove him from office over a scandal involving undisclosed meetings with a Chinese businessman. Jari was filmed at the gates of the palace surrounded by his ministers and greeting supporters who turned out to express their support. 75 lawmakers voted in favor of removing Jari, while 24 voted against and 3 abstained. Rescue crews on skis and snowcats battle blizzard conditions in an effort to reach 6 backcountry skiers still alive but trapped, after an avalanche in the high, rugged northern California mountains that left 10 other skiers missing as the danger of more slides remained high. The search and rescue crews were dispatched to Frog Lake in the Castle Peak area, northwest of Lake Tahoe, after someone reported an avalanche with people buried as a powerful winter storm moved through the state.
As the world watches, India puts its maritime might on full display off the coast of Visakhapatnam. 70 countries, 71 warships. The largest ever international fleet review led by India. From dramatic steam past and aerial combat drills to the towering presence of INS Vikrant, the message is clear. India's naval rise is not just regional, it's global. Shivani Sharma reports.
India showcases maritime muscle like never before. As the world watches off the coast of Visakhapatnam, the International Fleet Review 2026, led by India, took place.
We are witnessing the might of India's Navy in the complex operations at sea right now, with the International Fleet Review in progress, where the President is reviewing more than 70 ships across the world. And this is how India's Navy is not only enhancing its combat capabilities, but also taking the ties with the best navies of the world ahead. This is the lineup during the International Fleet Review of these ships. And when we talk about the capabilities, there are ships from the Indian Navy, around 20 ships, 20 submarines, the fighters, the helicopters, and we also see the ships from the friendly foreign nations. This is the lineup. There are 6 columns where the International Fleet Review is being done by the Indian Navy. This is happening after 10 years, so this is very important and prestigious.
Navies of 70 countries, 71 warships, the largest ever naval gathering in these waters.
Along with the sea operations, we also see the air operations by the Indian Navy, the Kamov helicopters, the Sea Kings, the different aerial assets of the Indian Navy are also displaying their might out here. These are the helicopters that are being used by the Indian Navy for different operations, the complex drills at sea, be it the humanitarian operations or the surveillance or any complex operation that takes place in the sea. So this is how we see during the International Fleet Review the skill in the air of the Indian Navy. This is the Donia aircraft of the Indian Navy that is being operated by Indian Navy since several decades now. They have been operational at multiple locations. They have been operational at multiple operations and complex missions. So this is the Dornier aircraft. So we've seen that apart from the ship, the warfare in the skies is also spectacular during the International Fleet Review.
And towering over it all, India's pride, INS Vikrant, battle ready, on alert. The world's fleet's coverage, and tomorrow the action deepens.
I'm really impressed about the hospitality, the sharp look of the Indian Navy, and the opportunities that we have to interact with the Indian Navy and one of the 73 delegates. So I see this as an opportunity, a day of joy, and a day of coordination with the Indian Navy.
Milan 2026 begins. Harbour interactions, strategic seminars, joint drills at sea. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will be chief guest. The CDS and 3 service chiefs will attend.
This could be considered as the biggest maritime gathering. The participation which is taking place as part of a larger scope of activities which start with this International Fleet Review today. We'll have the opening Milan ceremony, opening ceremony on 19th, and also the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium Conclave of Chiefs. 72 delegations from 72 countries are participating. There are 2 international constructs, which makes it 74. So in that form, it is the largest so far.
From anti-piracy missions to freedom of navigation, from diplomacy to deterrence, India's maritime rise is truly global. With Shivani Sharma in Visakhapatnam, Bureau Report, India Today.